In the Western Mediterranean, there is a place that still preserves all of its natural values. Located 5 miles south of the island of Majorca, it is the largest uninhabited archipelago in the entire Mediterranean. It covers an area of 1,836 hectares, 1,569 of which belong to the largest island, which bears the name of the archipelago. For centuries, it has been fighting against attempts at colonization by humans, and it has always emerged victorious. The harsh natural environment does not make it easy for those looking to settle here, but even so, many species are strongly attracted to Cabrera. In 1991, it was declared a maritime terrestrial national park. From that moment on, its fauna and flora began to recover, and today it has regained its former splendor. Cabrera is an archipelago in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea, where currents come from various directions and origins. These currents bring marine debris, litter that through careless or voluntary human actions ended up in the sea. But they also bring life. A loggerhead sea turtle, Careta careta. Many of those arriving in Cabrera were born in the Caribbean before crossing the Atlantic and entering the Mediterranean through the Straits of Gibraltar. For much of this journey, they swim close to the surface, driven by the marine currents. In these so-called passive migrations, creatures expend only the minimum effort. So no leg or fin movement is made unless absolutely necessary. They spend most of their time on the surface, and, being reptiles, they sunbathe to keep active. The sea provides everything else, transporting them through invisible lanes until they converge and coincide. Another turtle passes by. This one has a problem. There is a growth of alga above its eye, so its vision is partly obscured. For many millions of years, these turtles have navigated their way across the seas of our planet, carrying some algae that live exclusively on their shell. Surprisingly, this same shell has protected them from many other dangers over millions of years of evolution. However, if you happen to be small and don't have the benefit of a shell, you are constantly in danger of being attacked and eaten, unless you know how to look after yourself. These two oval pompanos have found a floating shelter. A wooden board has gone adrift, and pushed by the wind and probably by the same currents the turtles rely on for their migrations, it has led them to Cabrera. Over time, the board may host other peculiar organisms, such as these crustaceans, a species of goose barnacle. While stuck to the wood, they can navigate while filtering water to absorb nutrients during their improvised journey. In the past, small pelagic fish had natural forms of protection. However, their movements were conditioned, dictated by the journeys of the creatures that safeguarded them. Today, however, in the absence of these natural shelters, they are being increasingly substituted by the contaminating litter that humans dump into the sea. Whatever the fate of these nomadic travelers, it will always be uncertain. But there are other ways to stay safe on the journey to Cabrera. Getting together in huge shoals can offer good protection, just as long as you stay inside the shoal. This water column, an uncertain yet unique form of shelter, is being used by large schools of small pelagic fish to approach Cabrera. They are looking for food and a place to breed. And not far away, their predators are following them. When they reach the shore, they are attacked from all sides by amberjack, mackerel, or barracuda. Even common predators from reef floors, such as the groupers, come out of hiding to make the most of an opportunity. But still, there are millions and millions of small pelagic fish making their way to Cabrera without knowing if they will make it alive. Other predators that undergo incredible journeys arrive with the same purpose, and they are just about to encounter each other. Tuna find a perfect spot to feed and breed. This imposing school of bluefin tuna, almost 2 meters long, is looking for a signal which can come from above or below. From above. Not far away, another grand, spectacular hunter patrols the surface. Swordfish, unlike tuna, roam alone in the waters of Cabrera, waiting for their chance. However, elsewhere in the Balearic Islands there are even bigger predators. One of them is the sperm whale. To feed, they have to dive to the greatest depths in the park's waters, where they will capture squid and large fish, reaching 2,000 meters below the surface. Around Cabrera, common and striped dolphins abound. They enjoy playing in the water column or swimming and jumping over other larger creatures, just as they have done since ancient times. These giant creatures attract the attention of smaller inhabitants when they swim through the waters of the park during their long journeys in the Mediterranean. Pelagic sharks are not as abundant as cetaceans. Yet there is one that, despite suffering at the hands of the human race, still dives in the waters of Cabrera: the blue shark. Some specimens patrol the archipelago. Occasionally they can be seen close to the shore on the surface, but it is beyond the continental slope, 1,000 meters deep, where they like it the most. Those inhabitants of Cabrera that arrive by air are much faster. Eleonora's falcons have extravagant habits. Their entire life cycle revolves around the autumn migration of small birds, which they feed on when they are passing through islets such as those of Cabrera. No wonder, then, that these falcons usually settle here to bring their chicks into the world. To make the most of this food resource, the Eleonora's falcon breeds rather late. It lays its eggs at the beginning of August, and the fledglings are born by the end of the month, or even in September, just when many small birds fly past on their journey south. This is a colonial species, and it is not unusual to find several nests very close to each other. While raising their chicks, the adults take turns in flying over the sea to catch sight of possible prey. Even from land, they can distinguish potential targets and then dive like a missile over the unfortunate, exhausted birds. They are remarkable specialists. In a flash, they trap their prey in their claws and hold it under their tail to cut down on wind resistance. Whenever an adult brings back the prey, there is a formal greeting. These rituals further strengthen their bond, at least while they care for their chicks. But there is still no guarantee that their catch will reach the nest intact. Lizards lie in wait in those spots where the falcons like to pluck their prey. Ever daring creatures, they attempt to capture the small birds, sometimes straight from the falcon's claws. Finally, the falcon makes it back to the nest with its prey. The chicks start pulling at it as its mother helps them eat. They are, after all, still very young. These lizards aim to steal any leftovers. They keep their beady eye on the loot, hoping to take a piece for themselves as soon as they get the chance. But the chicks aren't going to stand for it, and they try to scare these brazen reptiles away. Fortunately, their mother is close by, and she won't allow anyone to take her chicks' food. The same falcon that previously stood up to the lizards now aggressively chases them away. The same happens in all the nests. It seems that lizards and falcons have an ongoing conflictual relationship. The small reptiles often keep watch near the nests, intent on stealing any remains. And when the chicks fall asleep, they are back to continue their search for something to put into their mouths. And so on, until the day they are ready for their first flight, which will take them away from these islands. Away to the island of Madagascar, where the entire world population of this falcon travels to spend the Arctic winter. But the archipelago has not always been this natural haven. Years ago, it was occupied by the army. Islets such as Naredona were systematically bombed and used during maneuvers for target practice. For several years, landing on the island was prohibited due to the risk of unexploded projectiles. However, the military presence in Cabrera prevented tourism, whose impact would have been devastating. Many of the precious fauna and flora that shelter here, the natural jewels of these small islands, would most probably have been lost. Some years later, on April the 29th, 1991, Cabrera was declared a maritime terrestrial national park, the first of its kind in Spain. So, in the end, nature reasserted itself and life re-emerged, victorious. Many species came back and took back possession of their old domains. Within a few years, seabird colonies had regained their former splendor. One of the dominant species was the shag. Linked to the sea, this species takes advantage of cliffs and islets to locate the nest where it will nurture its offspring. A few weeks ago, this pair of shags had 2 chicks, and like the rest of the families in this colony, they are always hungry. Adults get to the nest through small trails they have previously made by walking backwards and forwards. With their distinctive voice, they let their fledglings know they have arrived. The chicks spend many hours in the nest waiting for the adults and become anxious when they finally hear them close by. Their disappointment is palpable when they realize their mother has only brought back a twig to decorate the nest. Their mother decides to fatten them outside the nest. They'll feel more comfortable here. And then, the time has come for the chicks to be actively encouraged to leave the nest. Yet nature never sleeps. When darkness comes, chilling screams can be heard all around, like laments. But where do they come from? Is it from the sea? The shore? Or maybe the sky? These wailing sounds can last all night long. But who is the source of these cries? Homer tells us in the Odyssey. He associated them with the voices of the sirens that lured the sailors and made them leap into the sea, where they drowned. This explains the episode where Ulysses orders the sailors to put wax in their ears and tie him to the ship's mast, so he alone could hear the sirens and navigate across their domain without drowning. But the reality turns out to be less legendary. The origins of these sinister cries belong to the pelagic seabirds called shearwaters. Time is up. The sun is down, and with their bellies full, the shearwaters approach the cliff to return to their nests. They pass close to the shore. They search for the right spot and moment to land, still screaming tirelessly. Some land directly in their nests, while others land on the rocks or vegetation. After all this fuss, their landings are not always precise. Once inside the nest, there is no time to lose. The chick is hungry and wants to eat. Sometimes they will have to wait 3 or 4 days or even more before their parents' next visit. During this agonizing wait for nourishment, some colonies will be visited every day by equally hungry neighbors, mosquitoes, who eagerly feed on the blood of the shearwater chicks. When they leave the nest, some adults regurgitate. It seems that the leftovers the chicks couldn't swallow are rejected. And then the adults fly off into the darkness of the sea and the night. Sometimes they stay in the nests until dawn, when the cacophony finally ends. This will continue until the chick reaches adult size, and now with a protective layer of fat, will stretch its wings and fly out to sea. From the first day, they will start feeding on the fish and mollusks they spot on the open sea. And they will also get to know their opportunistic competitors. They often locate their prey when they jump out of the water, as they're chased from below by other predators, such as tuna. Another shearwater, not as abundant and smaller in size, breeds in Cabrera, the Balearic Sheawater, endemic to these islands. These smaller birds flap their wings much faster, and on windy days, seeing them fly through the waves of the sea in Cabrera is a spectacular sight. But inside the caves and the most hidden fissures, we can find the smaller cousin of the shearwater, the storm petrel. It's only as big as a sparrow and is the smallest among the pelagic seabirds. They don't make nests. They lay a single egg on the ground. Over approximately 40 days, the adults take shifts to keep the egg warm. These birds can wait for up to 4 days before being relieved of their duties by their partner. During these 4 long days, the guardian of the eggs will wait with nothing to eat or drink, while its partner stays away on the open sea, feeding and filling its belly. When the chicks are hatched, they have been known to go to Algeria to fish and return laden with food for their young. This recent observation is a considerable achievement for a bird just 14 centimeters long and 28 grams in weight, and it takes place here, in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea. But Cabrera has not always been what it is now. Despite not having wings or being expert swimmers, the next inhabitants we'll meet reached the Balearic Islands and Cabrera on foot. $5,700,000 years ago, the sea level in the Mediterranean fell by over 1,200 meters. This enabled the displacement of fauna from continents to islands, and vice versa. This resident is the Balearic lizard, endemic to Majorca and Menorca. This occurred in a moment in which Europe and Africa were connected, and the waters of the Mediterranean evaporated, revealing vestiges of ancient marine fauna that lived in the immersed Cabrera millions of years ago. About 300 million years later, other tectonic movements separated them again, where the modern-day Strait of Gibraltar is. The sea level rose back within a few hundred years, and the Balearic Islands remained isolated, as they are today, from surrounding continents. Since then, these lands have been home to lizards. The different conditions on each island and islet have tested the adaptability of the species. And in almost all the events that have taken place on Cabrera, the lizards have played a specific role. The lizard's solution to the challenge of survival was rapid diversification, known as adaptive radiation, much like Darwin's finches on the Galapagos Islands. In our case, the original lizard evolved to adapt to island-specific conditions, resulting in the emergence of several unique subspecies. On the islet of Naredona, for example, they have developed an interaction with the plant Wittania frutescens, locally called capseta. This plant blossoms for several months a year. The nectar-filled flowers are a delicacy for this smart reptile. After a while, a greenish fruit will emerge from the still intact flowers, which, when ripe, will take on an orange color that lizards are very familiar with. Every day, they will do a thorough tour of the branches, as if they were primates climbing trees to pick the African jungle's fleshy fruit. And, as is often the case, the effort of some is a gift to thieves and opportunists. But on the islet of Naredona, the Balearic lizard's plant diet is not confined to the capseta. They enjoy other plants too, such as, for example, the mallow. When it comes to getting food, lizards are brazen and brave. They have all adapted so well to the harsh conditions of these islands that you can find them everywhere. With almost no competition over resources, they have become opportunists that eat everything that falls within their reach, like this fig. In this fig tree, we find several creatures that have come to eat its fruits. Many bird species have begun their autumn migration, and figs provide large amounts of sugar, significant energy, in return for very little effort. In fact, the fig trees in Cabrera are now highly attractive to many small birds. In addition to birds, fig trees also attract insects and other diners. Genets. The few genets that remain in Cabrera crave figs. Free from threat and potential competitors, they also visit Cabrera's fig trees during daylight hours, in spite of those annoying wasps. As long as there are figs, this genet will visit the fig tree every day. As ever, the lizards are in the right place at the right time. They know every trick in the book. Cabrera is a perfect place for birds. Many of them are migratory species. Some spend the winter or the summer there, others stay all year round. Like the Balearic Warbler, endemic to Mallorca and the Pitiusas Islands. The modest appearance of this warbler may obscure its importance. It is well adapted to drier environments, and Cabrera offers them everything they need. In fact, the largest Balearic population of this warbler can probably be found right here. With the warmer temperatures, the female warblers become fertile, and the previously silent and unfriendly males now become noisy and active. They lose all sense of discretion and choose the canopy of heather or the tops of trees to sing their song, in the open, to make sure they'll be noticed. But there's no time to lose. The nest has to be built, the eggs laid, the chicks fattened, and a second clutch laid if there is enough food. In this family of Balearic warblers, the eggs have already hatched. It is still early, and the female is incubating the chicks. In a few hours, everything will change. The heat will be unbearable, and the chicks will be left on their own while their parents search for food. They search tirelessly through thick branches among low vegetation and bushes, and just when it seems there's nothing to be found, they manage to catch an insect. Indeed, thanks to Cabrera's high temperatures, the vegetation provides accommodation for abundant insects, so catches are assured. The diverse vegetation of Cabrera is home to a number of unique species, such as the rogeta. Cabrera doesn't provide the vegetation with consistently large amounts of water, but thanks to occasionally intense rainfall, there is even a waterway with its own name, along which large amounts of water flow towards the sea. The water channel. Sometimes it rains so heavily that even in the dry climate of Cabrera, water flows over the surface, forming small microclimates that allow invertebrates and plants that cannot be found anywhere else in the archipelago to survive. This vegetation in Cabrera hosts a significant number of invertebrates. Many of them arrive by their own means, as butterflies like this one probably did in 2019. Once on Cabrera, they found clumps of a plant that was very favorable to them. Boxwood. But then a problem arose. The butterflies laid eggs, and the caterpillars became a pest for this mountain bush, once abundant on Cabrera. The first thing this caterpillar does is to sew the boxwood leaves together to form a shelter where it hides, out of reach of predators. Then, when it feels it is out of danger, it begins to eat. With nothing to threaten them, the caterpillars eat the boxwood leaves until the plant dies. With no specialized predators, they cannot easily be caught. Who knows if one day they might meet their match in the lizards, if they learn how to find them. The remarkable versatility of these reptiles works against the caterpillar. It's most probably just a matter of time. But some other invertebrates are coveted by lizards and other predators of the national park. Ants have begun to emerge from this trunk, and among them, ants with wings, which will take to the air to explore and eventually settle in new territories. A kind of war has started in this little portion of Cabrera. The glow of their wings makes these ants highly visible, and they have virtually no formic acid, which makes them very attractive to predators. The conflict in the anthill has not gone unnoticed by the lizards or by the Tarantula mauritanica, the common wall gecko. They will attempt to trap those that fall to the ground on their first flight. Climbing up the trunk doesn't seem like a good option, but nevertheless, the gecko tries. Thousands of sharp jaws defend the nest. Now the ants, having become aware of the attack, have spread their troops out around the trunk. A lizard also tries, and is ferociously chased away while being bitten from all sides. Night comes and proves to be the best form of self-defense for the ant's nest. This time, the chance has been wasted. However, there is a small bird that specializes in capturing most of its prey in flight, and it usually feasts on these ants when they fly. It is the Balearic flycatcher. It also breeds on Cabrera. Until a few years ago, it was thought to belong to the same species as the European flycatcher, but genetic and behavioral studies indicate that the Balearic, Corsican, and Sardinian flycatchers belong to a new species, and the one that lives in the Balearics is an endemic subspecies. It spends the winter in tropical Africa and arrives at the end of March to breed on the islands. This pair has found in Cabrera a place often visited by tourists in summer, now completely empty and deserted in 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the picnic area. So they have decided to build their nest just underneath the roof. When it comes to nesting, they are often attracted to structures made by humans, and in this case, everything was perfect. These chicks were hatched nearly 2 weeks ago, and they are just about to leave the nest. This morning, the largest of the chicks is starting to make its way out along the roof rafters. The next day, the nest is empty. Each one has flown their own way, and although they're all still quite near the picnic area, they are quite far apart from each other. As the young stay around the bushes and pine trees, the adults will continue to bring them food until they become confident in the air. When they are able to start hunting on their own, they will be freed from parental control. The largest bird that can be found nesting in Cabrera is the Osprey, with a wingspan of about 2 meters. They get all their food from the sea and live exclusively on fish. As long as their chicks remain in the nest, they will demand to be fed at all hours. When they are small, the male osprey brings the fish. But now they have grown so much that both adults need to work in order to bring them enough food to eat. And the squabbling between siblings at this stage of their development can become fierce and dangerous. Fortunately, the waters surrounding Cabrera abound in number and species of fish, so there is usually enough food to keep all the chicks well fed. As the days go by, the chicks become more confident, and with the wind in their faces, they test their wings by making short but increasingly high vertical flights. Finally, their parents, who no longer bring food to the nest, provoke the last fight between the chicks, who, desperate with hunger, fall into the void, and in so doing, become fully airborne for the first time. So they take off on their maiden flight, propelled by their wings. For several weeks, they will still be fed by their parents, but they are already learning what will make them what they are: ospreys. They will soon begin a new stage of their lives, where they will abandon these islands by making use of the bird's most wondrous ability: flight. But Cabrera will not be entirely deserted. Some inhabitants will stay forever, waiting for future seasons to bring more of those opportunities that evolution has placed within their reach. And yet evolution has not given the species enough time to fully adapt, and most are not able to recognize the new obstacles and dangers they may encounter along the way. It is our duty and our responsibility to ensure that, on their return to this small archipelago, all of them find it just as they left it, without any obstacles along the way.